Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, let's take a look at the health of the state's economy, and then, it's almost ready for the students to come back to our colleges. Well, what about college readiness? Let's get to it.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, welcome back to the program. Well, in the course of the last several weeks, we've been taking a look at the health of the state's economy. Joining me is Stephen Herzenberg. He's the executive director. He's the economist, actually, with the Keystone Research Center. Stephen, welcome to the program.
Great to be here, Terry.
All right, look, let's get right to it. You're an economist. You study the state's economy. I think you have a different view from some of the guests that we've had on before, and that's fine. We want a variety of viewpoints. How strong is the growth of Pennsylvania's economy since this recession began?
Our view is grounded in the data, the job numbers, the unemployment numbers. The facts are that Pennsylvania's recovery has been pretty slow. Basically, the policies have been misguided. We tried to cut our way to prosperity, big cuts in education funding, for example, which led to 20,000 layoffs. You see the impact of those policies in our job numbers. So our job numbers were worse in 2012 than 2011, were worse in 2013 than 2012. They're a little bit better this year, but if you go back to January 2011, which is sort of when the state switched clearly to a cuts-only set of policies, particularly with regard to the state budget, what you see is that we're 47th in job growth since January 2011. Those are the facts. This year's a little better. Unemployment's a little better, although that's partly because fewer people are in the labor market. So it's not an unambiguous positive when the unemployment rate comes down. Yeah. So
one of the things that,
those are the facts.
One of the questions that certainly comes up when I look at the national economic data is the number of folks who have dropped out of, they're just not looking anymore. Yeah. And so that has an effect on, if there's an uptick in people looking, well, then the unemployment percentages will go up because they're looking but have.
That's right. So
you're the economist.
And it gets very confusing for lay people because they're used to the idea that if unemployment's 7%, that's too high. If unemployment comes down to 5 or 4%, we're doing better. But you're exactly right. What economists tend to look at is what's called the employment to population ratio among folks of working age, because that's not impacted by the definition of who's in the labor force or not. If you look nationally and in Pennsylvania, what you see is that the employment to population ratio has come down several percentage points since 2007, and that's just evidence that we haven't fully recovered yet from the Great Recession.
Is the way, there's a huge difference, I'll be candid, between liberals and conservatives about how you get out of a recession. Liberals tend to say government should spend money, do deficit spending if you have to, raise some taxes. Conservatives tend to say, let the marketplace do it, let the economy bottom out. In this state, how would you argue how state government has handled this recession?
Poorly. And again, the facts are, the economy is like an old train. It has with its engine, right? And you need enough coal to keep the engine of the economy purring forward, moving steadily along the track. What happens in a recession is that more people are laid off, wages are flat or declining, consumers don't buy. Businesses don't think they're going to have customers, they don't invest so much. So the private sector basically is pulling coal out of the engine of the economy. That means that if you're going to get the economy going strong again, the government has to cut taxes or the government has to invest in the future. If we don't do that, then if the government does what the private sector is doing, which is take demand out of the economy, take coal out of the economic engine, the train slows down more and we get a deeper and longer recession. Right. That's basically what we've done in Pennsylvania. Goes back again to that phrase, you can't cut your way to prosperity. Other states that did what we did have also had a slow recovery. States like California that invested in the future now have surpluses in their state budget as well as a robust recovery.
Well, one of the things that when you hear these, when they start talking about downgrading our bond ratings, I can just see our viewers out there going, oh no, where is this conversation going?
Right.
But that has to do with the capacity of the state to borrow, correct? To borrow and what it has to pay when it borrows. Why? Right. And there's been a downgrading of Pennsylvania's bond rating by Moody's, one of the big how do I describe Moody's?
Rating agency.
Rating agencies, right. Well,
so for it does sound obscure, but actually what bond rating agencies do is actually common sense. If a state has bonds, that it's borrowed money, and therefore it has to pay back the people who bought the bonds over a period of time. What the rating agency is doing is figuring out how likely is that state to be able to pay back that bond. Is that bond good?
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And so what it really is a judgment about the long-term financial health of the state. And so when Moody downgrades our bond rating, what it's saying is that our long-term fiscal policies are misguided. And so we've been surprised that Governor Corbett has been trumpeting this around the state because basically it's a negative verdict on the state's budget policies of the last several years.
All right, we're going to run to a break. We're talking with Stephen Herzenberg. He's the economist at the Keystone Research Center. We'll be back. I want to talk about a couple of really important topics. Pensions, it's a huge issue in the state. The cigarette tax that Philadelphia has been waiting for. We'll deal with those subjects in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
We're talking all things economy with Stephen Herzenberg. He's the executive director, actually the economist with the Keystone Research Center. He holds both titles. All right, look, pensions, there isn't any doubt that it looms large. That's one of the reasons that Moody's said we got this downgrade in our credit rating in the state.
Although it wasn't the main reason. If you read the
I understand,
rating,
but it's one of them.
Yeah.
So we've got $50 billion heading to $60 billion. It's 20% on average of the school district's budgets go to pension payments. What's the solution to that?
Well, we got in trouble with our pensions because we acted for most of a decade like they were free or mostly free, right? So we kept on not putting money in because it was a tough revenue year, or because we wanted to increase
education. The employer did. Employer, not employee.
The state.
Not employee.
You're exactly right, Terry. The school teachers, public health nurses.
Money up. They put the money on the table.
Basically, 7 cents of every dollar of every paycheck has gone into their pensions, which is why they deserve to get the pensions at the end of the day. But so, the pension problem built up over a period of years, and so now the bill has come due. And so the bottom line is that we have to put the money in. The good news is it's a problem that we can solve over 30 years. So I think there are some things we can do. Unfortunately, so far, the proposals that the governor has backed both 2 years ago and then this year, according to the pension experts, the so-called actuaries that have to study these proposals to guide legislators, neither of those proposals really make progress on the state's debt. In fact, the governor's own proposal would have made the state's debt problem worse.
Would your solution then be, of the solution, some say let's go to a 401k style plan for employees after they reach a certain income threshold, they would be in defined benefit. But would your solution be just to borrow the money at a lower interest rate over the long period of time? That's what I hear That's the third of these
Sure.
solutions.
Well, so that's we think if you can borrow the money at 5% and then earn 7.5% on it, that makes sense. We also think not only for pensions, but for education funding, for infrastructure, the state needs revenue for many different reasons, and we've been giving away revenue because we're not taxing, for example, the shale drillers, and because we keep cutting corporate taxes, even though there's no evidence that it creates jobs. So we need more revenue. We can borrow some money at low interest rates, and then, I think we can go back to the table and have some compromises. Employees.
Okay, before I let you go,
Okay.
I got to ask you a question about the Philly cigarette tax, $2 a pack, 85 million. Governor has now said, even though it didn't pass the legislature, he'll front up over 200 million to help the schools get started. My sense about that is $2 a pack. Philadelphians would pay for cigarettes. The Philadelphia city, they're in favor of it. But now you're the economist. Aren't people just simply going to go somewhere else and buy their cigarettes if they can, as opposed to pay $2 a pack more?
Mostly they're not.
You think so?
Mostly they're not.
You think it's going to raise that kind of revenue?
It'll raise revenue. It's clearly not the best solution. I mean, the better solution would be the state to adequately fund Philadelphia schools. But in 2011, the state cut funding per Philadelphia school student over $1,300 per student, where some rich districts in the Philadelphia suburbs got cuts of $30 per student. So the bottom line is many of those 20,000 school layoffs in Pennsylvania that slowed down our recovery happened in Philadelphia. The bottom line is the state has not invested in education in the last several years. Philadelphia, more than anyone else, has bore the brunt of those misguided policies. So the cigarette tax that Philadelphians will want to impose on themselves is their best of a bad set of short-term options.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in. All right, this couldn't be a better time to talk about college readiness and college transition programs. We were just chatting with the Economist here about what to do about employment, having students ready to go to college, ready to take employment. We have the president of Milton Hershey School here, along with the valedictorian of the 2014 class. We'll take a look at college readiness in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance, representing companies involved in America's most affordable, reliable energy source. To learn more, visit pacoalalliance.com.
Well, it couldn't be a better time of the year to talk about college readiness and college transition programs. Joining me to talk about this is Kayvon Asemani. He's the valedictorian and student government president. This guy is off to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. And Pete Gurt, he's the president of Milton Hershey School. Mr. President, I like that title. I always like that title, Mr. President. Let's start with you. Milton Hershey, I mean, you're preparing your students for post-graduation. What do you do that makes a difference, do you think?
I think Milton Hershey School has a long-standing history of helping young people from low-income backgrounds define success for themselves and to give them access to post-secondary colleges and universities. We do so much while students are with us in terms of helping them with their academic readiness as well as their character readiness. And we also have programs in place in transitional living. So we allow for our seniors to live on our campus, basically in dorm-like living, so that they have the social readiness for success in college as well.
Well, Kayvon, let's talk about how many years were you there, first of all?
I enrolled on September 25th, 2006.
2006, so
8
what's
years.
that, you spent 8 years there?
Yes.
Your president just pointed out what the sort of the theoretical background. What did you get out of it? What mattered?
It was amazing. I got a home. You get out what you put in at the Milton Hershey School.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things I learned there. I made sure I worked hard, enrolled in tough courses, got involved in my favorite clubs and activities, engaged in the social life, and really soaked up the experience as much as I could. Mm-hmm. And I really think it helped out in the end. I achieved my lifelong dream. It's been my dream since 8th grade to attend Wharton.
Okay, I'm letting you off the hook for not coming to Franklin and Marshall, but that's okay. Wharton's a great school. Look, you talk about, President Gurt, you talk about transitional living. What's that mean?
Transitional living is a program that we've established for our seniors. And seniors are required to live in dorm-like living. They're required to shop for their own food. They're required to cook their own food. They manage their time. They manage their studies. They manage everything on their own. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that we learned in our experience is that students often struggle in their first year of college because of the amount of free time they have when they come from a very structured environment. And so this was an environment that allows them to make some mistakes while they're still with us, and we're able to teach to it. Yeah,
one of them is, I notice here, money and time management. So you have all this, I mean, with young people, there's all these sorts of things to do. You got the social media now. How did you and your colleagues handle that?
Well, some people handle it better than others.
Good point.
I guess the great thing is that, there's a structured environment at Milton Hershey, even if you're not trying to get yourself involved. And I think that's when some students struggle when they graduate, is that when they're not too involved and the school is like managing their time and they're not learning how to do it themselves, then they might struggle. But the good thing, what I mentioned about Milton Hershey is that there's a lot of things to get involved in. And if you're involved in the sports, or you're involved in the student government activities, and you're studying hard, you have to learn how to budget your time, because there are only so many hours in a day. Sometimes you don't get as much sleep because you need to study. Yeah,
one of the things I've noticed that, in a couple of college campuses that I've been, a professor at over the years is that, they have lots of things, and we've talked about this before about credit cards, and all of a sudden students are left on their own. I mean, you make a great point. They're left on their own, they're not at the home, and it's not time, but we're going to get this credit card and that credit card, and we're going to not always make wise decisions. How important is, I mean, we always talk about the academic side, and boy, that's really important. But there's other aspects of this that I think you're arguing you emphasize that really matters.
Absolutely. I do think that we look at it as three legs of a stool, and that the academic readiness is just one part of it. The social and character readiness is just as important. And then the financial preparation. And so when we look at our kids in terms of how they learn about money, how they manage money, how they discipline themselves around that, we actually have a certification in financial literacy for many of our seniors so that they understand the financial aspects of not only managing their own money, but how to navigate the challenges of colleges. All
right, we're talking with the folks from Milton Hershey School about college readiness and college transition. Can you have a better time to do this? And next couple of weeks, the students are back at the colleges and universities across the country. Preparedness matters. We'll continue to talk about that in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Business Council and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation.
College readiness, college transition. Kayvon, let me ask you this question. Lots of schools now, not just at Milton Hershey, but others are doing this relationship with colleges and universities, do some higher level courses, college preparatory, college level courses. How important is that, do you think, for, as you talk to younger folks?
Academics first. That was my thing when I was in school. And, any other activity that I ever had, I made sure that I was focusing on my academics before I added them on. at Milton Hershey School, I made sure I took all the honors classes that I could fit in my schedule when I was a 9th and 10th grader. And then when I was able to start taking advanced placement classes that were the college level courses my junior and senior year, I made sure I fit those on. And then once those were on my schedule, I put the honors classes to fill the spaces.
You know, President Gurt, one of the things that strikes me that you seem to do, and I've had a tour of your school, is you have a relationship with alums that I wonder how that would transition to other schools, both private and public schools, secondary schools, to develop more of a relationship, to use the talents that are there. What aspect of what you do, well, first of all, what is it that you do that works? Because obviously that's something you're very proud of.
There are several things that we do. We have over 40 students that graduated in Kayvon's class that actually earned college credit while they were still seniors with us. And in addition, next year we're starting a program with Temple University where approximately 20 of our students will actually take a full college credit course load while they're on our campus for the second half of their senior year as a way to help them prepare. But as you mentioned with alumni, we have over 9,000 alumni who enrolled at Milton Hershey School and graduated. And they love to help and support and be mentors to our graduates. Mm-hmm. And we have most of our graduating seniors are aligned with an alumni mentor to help them, because many of our kids are first-generation college goers, and they need additional support that other kids get normally.
Yeah. One of the things, I mean, I've made this argument over time, and I'll ask you this, Kayvon, that as a college professor, and I've had high school students in my classes. I thought, well, for 10 or 15% of high school students, the senior year, other than, I got to be careful how I say this, but they could go right on to college. It used to be we worried about whether socially they could do it. I think anymore, senior year to first year in college. How important do you think that transition is? Do you think that more of your peers should be taking a look at doing exactly what you did, even if they're doing it in their own schools? Take more college level. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I was fortunate to take one college class at Lebanon Valley College.
Right.
And I was in that classroom with other college kids. There were freshmen and sophomores who were at LVC, and I was a senior at Milton Hershey. And it was me and 3 other friends. We participated just like anybody else. We raised our hands a lot. We found that we were actually more involved in the classroom stuff than some of the other kids who were at that school, and we did very well in the class. I got an A in the class. I thought I was ready, and I also made friends in that classroom.
Friends that you kept.
So
all right. Well, look, I want to
social.
thank you for coming in. Obviously, you have a great program at Hershey, and you do wonderful work. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.